Whether you liked his politics or not, Mr. Vajpayee will be the most favorite politician of, I would say, almost any political journalist of his times. One, because he was big-hearted, and second, he always had a smile even in a tough situation. The first time I met him, I wasn't 26 yet. I was covering Assam in Guwahati, and I got a call from the local BJP office asking me to come and meet Mr. Vajpayee. So I was quite excited. I went to the guest house where he was staying on the outskirts of the city on a hill, and I thought I'll be ushered into the VIP room, but he was sitting outside on the steps of the guest house, and he said, "Aap to naujawan aadmi, you are a young man, come sit with me here." And we chatted for an hour where he listened to me, he let me talk. He didn't lecture me, unlike all politicians who try to lecture, who only want to lecture you. And he said that, look, I understand this is a very complex problem in Assam. It involves Hindus, Muslims, India, Pakistan, history of partition, Bangladesh, Assamese, Bengalis. And then he said, I don't know who will ever resolve this. And we see even now with NRC, the problem is still with us. The second time during the 1984 elections, which was the Rajiv Gandhi wave, he was contesting in Gwalior against Madhavrao Sindhia. And we obviously thought he will win. This was called Raja or Ranka, king versus commoner. And we thought the king will have no chance. And there was a very interesting history of how Mr. Vajpayee had gone to study in college on a scholarship given to him by Madhavrao Sindhia's father. So we were all on his side. But he cautioned us. He said, look, this is a different kind of election. I don't know what will happen here. And the previous day, he had fractured his foot in Mehsana in Gujarat. So he had a plaster cast on his foot. So one of us asked him that, how will you fight the Congress party now with your foot in plaster? And he lifted his leg and displayed that for cameras. And he said, their hand, Congress symbol is the hand, and my foot. And everybody laughed and he laughed. So that was his method. Now I will tell you how prescient he was. In that election, BJP got wiped out. He lost that election. Bahuguna lost that election to Amitabh Bachchan. BJP only got 2 seats in that election in a house of 543. So after that, I was writing a cover story on the state of India's opposition. So I went to meet him. He again gave me time, although I was so junior, and he gave me endless time. And in that interview, it's a published interview, he said that, look, I see a problem with my party, that our leaders are old. We need young leaders like Rajiv Gandhi, because youth of India has voted for Congress because it has a young leader. And then, and this is January 1985, 33 years back, he said, we have some young leaders like Pramod Mahajan in Bombay and Arun Jaitley in Delhi. We have to find a few more like that. So that tells you something about his prescience and also his big heart. Third occasion was when I saw him as a problem solver nationalist. He had not yet come to power in 1996. The election had been announced and it looked like Narasimha Rao will be defeated. We broke a story at that point that after elections had been announced, Narasimha Rao's government had paid an advance to Yeltsin's government in Russia to place an order for Sukhoi 30 aircraft, which is now the workhorse of the Indian Air Force. So immediately the opposition reacted. Mr. Jaswant Singh and Vajpayee reacted and said, what is this? This looks like a scandal. But I was summoned to see him and over breakfast. And I remember that morning, he was buttering his toast and only feeding it to his little dog. I think it was a Pom. And he asked me, he said, listen, first of all, is the story accurate? I said, the story is absolutely accurate. If we published it, it should be accurate. Second, he said, is there a scandal in it? I said, I have no idea, but by the look of it, doesn't look like there is a scandal in it. There might be some other story. At the same time, the Air Force needs this plane very badly because Air Force is really suffering with falling force levels. So he said, let's wait for some time. I don't want this to have the Bofors curse. Let's wait and find out more. And he and Jaswant Singh exchanged notes. And then they decided to not talk about this. And that scandal or so-called scandal died at that point. When they came to power for 13 days, they saw the files and they figured what the truth was. The truth was, just as India was having its elections, Yeltsin was having his election. And the factory that makes the Sukhoi in Russia was based in Yeltsin's constituency and had not paid salaries to its staff for a long time. So Yeltsin requested Narasimha Rao that if he could pay an advance to him, to his government, they'll be able to pay salaries that will work for him in his election. So Narasimha Rao made that deal not to shore up his electoral prospects, but Yeltsin's electoral prospects, and India needed that plane anyway and got a good deal. Later, when Mr. Vajpayee lost power and Gowda's government came to power, he, Mr. Jaswant Singh, Mulayam Singh Yadav, and Congress leaders, in a story that I have described in detail on the print, they got together, they studied the entire deal and figured that there was no scandal in it and let the deal go through. And today, Sukhoi 30 is the pride of Indian Air Force. During the war in Kargil, I had sought time with him, so I went to meet him, and I was sitting in his ante-room for an hour and a half. My appointment was 3 o'clock. I was ushered in at 4:30 because his staff kept on whispering to me, कि अटल जी सो रहे हैं, अटल जी सो रहे हैं, उठे नहीं, कैसे उठाएं? So he saw me and in mock horror said, अरे शेखर जी, अनर्थ हो गया, आपको इतनी देर प्रतीक्षा कराई, made you wait for this long, now how will I answer you? So I said, sir, again I sort of mocked back because you could take liberties with him. And I said, देश का युद्ध हो रहा है कारगिल में, the country is at war and the Prime Minister is sleeping in the afternoon. So he said, obviously Prime Minister should not be sleeping. Prime Minister should get a rifle, climb the mountains in Kargil and fight the Pakistanis because this country is so short of young people. It was very disarming. It was also very funny in a very tense environment. So it tells you also how to deal with stress. And the fourth time, I will tell you, this is when attack on parliament took place and it looked like Pakistan and India will go to war anytime. Again, I asked for time. It was the winter. He sat me with him in his garden and offered me soup, which he was also drinking. So in the middle of this, I said, अटल जी आप युद्ध करने वाले हैं कि नहीं? So he said, आपको क्यों बताएं? Why should I tell you? तो मैंने कहा उसका कारण है. And I told him jokingly that my family and I had planned a vacation in Munnar, in Kerala. And I said, I don't want to be caught there while you start a war and aid spaces are closed. How will I answer my grandchildren? So he again, with a mock horror, said, hey, Shekhar ji, ye samay hai chutti par jane ka. Then I thought he's really going to war. And then he gave me a little lecture. He said, look, everybody wants to go to war. The armed forces want to go to war. Everybody is angry. I asked them, when the history of this war is written, what will be the name of this war? So I asked him, what does it mean? He said, every war has a name. You call something the Yom Kippur War, the 6-Day War, Bangladesh Liberation War. Because the name that you seek for the war is the objective you have for the war. So is the objective to occupy Pakistan? No. Is the objective to break up Pakistan? No. Is the objective to capture the rest of Kashmir? No. What is the objective? Is the objective just to beat up the Pakistanis because you are angry? In that case, you will have to call it the war of anger. So do you really want a war of anger? And then he said, देखिए, when you begin a war, where you begin a war, how you begin a war is entirely in your hands. Where the war will stop, how it will stop, when it will stop is not in your hands. So a leader, a Rajneta, as he said, has to think many times before taking his country to war. So I said, in that case, you are not going to war. So he said, well, the preparation and the threat of war has to be so real that even we believe it and you believe it. Only then will coercive diplomacy work. And if it goes to war, it leads up to war, I will take that risk. So these few instances give you different insights into the minds of a really great human being.